Jake Morrison walked through the metal detector at the Zephyrian Royal Palace gates. The machine beeped once and went silent. The guard, a tall, blue-skinned Zephyrian with silver eyes, waved him through with a polite nod. Jake adjusted his diplomatic jacket and continued toward the main entrance. Behind him, he heard a loud argument breaking out at the security checkpoint. General Vextar of the Krillian delegation was shouting in his harsh, clicking language while two guards held scanning devices over his arms. Jake turned to watch as the Krillian's natural arm blade slowly extended from his forearms, gleaming like polished steel in the palace lights. "This is unfair treatment." Vextar switched to standard galactic speech, his voice carrying the typical Krillian rasp. "The human walks through without inspection, yet we must submit to this embarrassment." One of the guards, a female Zephyrian with elaborate braided hair, spoke calmly. "General, all species must surrender their natural weapons before entering the royal court. This has been law for over 800 years. But humans carry no weapons either." Vextar pointed one clawed finger at Jake. "Why do they receive special treatment?" Jake stopped walking and turned back toward the commotion. Other delegates were gathering around the security area now. He recognized Ambassador Threll of the Aquatic Collective, whose poisonous spine fins were being carefully removed by specialized medical staff. The Granite Lord's representative was already having his bone spikes filed down to safe lengths. "There is no special treatment," the guard replied to Vextar. "The law applies equally to all species. Humans simply have no natural weapons to surrender." "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "Every intelligent species develops weapons. It is the way of evolution." Jake decided to approach the group. As Earth's newest ambassador to the Galactic Council, he was still learning about interspecies politics. This seemed like something he should understand. "Is there a problem here?" Jake asked the guard. "No problem, Ambassador Morrison," she replied. "Simply following standard security procedures." Vextar's eyes narrowed as he looked at Jake. Humans hide your weapons well. What are they? Concealed blades, poison glands? Some kind of projectile system?" Jake held up his hands, palms forward. "No weapons at all, General. Humans don't have any natural weapons." "Lies," Vextar hissed. "Show me your claws." Jake wiggled his fingers. The nails were short and blunt. "These are all we have. They're for gripping things, not fighting." "Your fangs, then." Jake opened his mouth and pointed to his small, flat teeth. "These are for eating plants and cooked meat. Nothing dangerous." Vextar stepped closer, his arm blades still extended. "Your venom sacs, your bone spurs, your acid glands, something." "None of those things," Jake said calmly. "Humans really don't have natural weapons." The Krillian general looked confused and angry. "Then how did your species survive? How did you become spacefaring? How do you defend yourselves?" "We use tools," Jake explained. "We build weapons when we need them, but our bodies don't grow them naturally." "This makes no sense," Vextar muttered. He turned to the security guard. "I demand to speak with Queen Lirelai about this discrimination." The guard nodded politely. "The Queen will see all delegates at the welcome ceremony in 1 hour. You may raise your concerns then." As Vextar reluctantly allowed the medical team to safely remove his arm blades, Jake continued into the palace. The building was magnificent, with tall crystal columns and floating gardens that defied gravity. Artwork from dozens of worlds decorated the walls. Jake found his assigned quarters and unpacked his belongings. His orders from Earth Command were simple: attend the annual Galactic Council Summit, vote according to his instructions, and file detailed reports about anything unusual. This weapons controversy seemed like it qualified as unusual. He made notes on his tablet about the incident. The fact that humans could enter royal courts without weapons inspection was news to him. His briefing materials had mentioned something called the human exception in interspecies law, but he had assumed it was about trade regulations or something boring like that. An hour later, Jake joined 200 delegates in the palace's grand throne room. Queen Lirelai sat on a throne made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. She was beautiful in the ethereal way of her species, with pale skin that seemed to glow from within and hair that moved like it was underwater. "Welcome, honored delegates," the Queen said. her voice carrying clearly through the vast room. "We gather once again to discuss the future of our galaxy in peace and cooperation." General Vextar stood up immediately. "Your Majesty, I must protest the unequal treatment of human delegates. They alone are exempt from weapons surrender." The Queen's expression remained calm. "General, there is no exemption. The law states clearly that all natural weapons must be surrendered. Humans have no natural weapons to surrender. But this gives them unfair advantage." Vextar clicked his mandibles in frustration. "They can move freely through secure areas, while we cannot." "The law was established after careful study of all known species," Queen Lorelei replied. "It applies equally to everyone." "I demand to know why humans are different," Vextar shouted. The Queen looked at Jake, who felt suddenly uncomfortable as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. "Ambassador Morrison, would you like to explain your species' unique situation?" Jake stood up slowly. "Your Majesty, I'm afraid I don't fully understand it myself. I was told that humans don't have natural weapons, but I don't know why that's significant in galactic law." A murmur went through the crowd. Some delegates seemed surprised that Jake didn't know about his own species' special status. "Perhaps," the Queen said thoughtfully, "it is time for a history lesson. Keeper Morthan, please prepare the archive files. Tomorrow, Ambassador Morrison will learn why his species holds such a unique position in our society." As the ceremony continued, Jake noticed something troubling. Several palace guards were whispering among themselves and glancing nervously at the delegates. One guard near the back exit kept checking his weapon and looking at his wrist communicator. Jake had served in Earth's diplomatic corps for 15 years. He had learned to read body language and recognize signs of tension. Something was making the palace security nervous, and it wasn't just Vextar's complaints about weapons policy. He made more notes on his tablet, documenting everything he observed. The hegemony faction delegates were sitting together in one section, frequently passing notes between themselves. Their leader, a reptilian creature called Supreme Counselor Drax, kept staring at the Queen with an expression that Jake couldn't interpret but didn't like. As the ceremony ended, and delegates began filing out, Jake overheard two guards talking in hushed tones near his section. They were speaking in rapid Zephyrian, but he caught a few words in Galactic Common: security breach, unauthorized access, and tomorrow's schedule. Jake decided he would pay close attention during his history lesson with Keeper Morthon. Something told him that understanding why humans were trusted with weapons-free access might be more important than he had realized. Jake followed Keeper Morthon through the palace archives the next morning. The elderly Zephyrian moved slowly, his long robes trailing behind him as he led Jake deeper into the crystal-lined corridors beneath the palace. The archives contain 8,000 years of galactic history, Morthon explained, his voice soft with age. The Human Exception Law is one of our most important documents, though few remember why it was created. They entered a circular room filled with glowing data crystals. Morthon selected one crystal from a high shelf and placed it into a reading device. Holographic images began floating in the air above them. This was 847 galactic standard years ago, Morthon said. The first Galactic Council meeting where all known species gathered in one place. Jake watched the hologram show hundreds of different alien species crowded into what looked like an earlier version of the palace throne room. The scene looked chaotic, with delegates arguing and gesturing wildly. It was not peaceful, Morthon continued. 3 separate assassination attempts happened during that first week, all committed by delegates who had concealed natural weapons. The hologram changed to show security footage of the attacks. Jake winced as he watched a Krillian delegate suddenly extend hidden arm blades and lunge at another species representative. In another scene, a delegate with what looked like a peaceful, plant-like appearance shot poisonous spines from their neck frills. The Vorton delegate nearly died from that poison attack, Morthon said sadly. The Krillian blade attack killed 2 guards. The third attempt involved a species that could secrete acid from their skin glands. That's terrible, Jake said. But I still don't understand how this led to the human exception. Morthon selected another crystal. After those attacks, the council voted to ban all natural weapons from diplomatic gatherings. But there was a problem. A new hologram showed Scientists and doctors examining representatives from different species. Jake could see various aliens being scanned with medical equipment. Every species they studied had some form of natural weapon, Morthon explained. Claws, fangs, poison, acid, bone spikes, electrical discharge, crushing strength, or other dangerous abilities. The scientists worried that banning everyone would make diplomacy impossible. The hologram changed again, showing what looked like a research laboratory. Jake could see scientists in protective suits studying biological samples. They tested every known species for 3 years, Morthon said. Physical capabilities, psychological profiles, stress responses, everything. They wanted to understand which species posed the greatest risks during negotiations. And humans were different? Jake asked. Humans were unique, Morthon replied. Not only did they lack natural weapons, but their psychological profiles showed something remarkable. The hologram now showed brain scans and behavioral charts. Jake could see human brain patterns compared with dozens of other species. Most species show increased aggression when stressed or threatened. Their natural fight-or-flight responses involve using their natural weapons. But humans showed the opposite pattern. Jake studied the charts. What do you mean? Under stress, humans become more cooperative, not more violent. They seek to solve problems through communication and teamwork. Their first instinct is to protect others, not attack them. The hologram showed historical footage of humans in various crisis situations. Jake watched scenes of natural disasters where humans worked together to rescue strangers, war zones where human medics treated enemies, and accidents where humans risked their lives to save people they had never met. This made no sense to the other species, Morthon said. Every other race studied showed that stress and danger triggered their weapon responses. But humans showed the exact opposite behavior. A new image appeared, showing a human woman in what looked like an early diplomatic uniform. She had dark hair and determined eyes. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was your species' first representative to the Galactic Council, Morthon said. She proved the scientists' theories correct during the most dangerous diplomatic crisis in galactic history. The hologram changed to show the palace throne room filled with angry delegates from multiple species. Jake could see weapons drawn and delegates shouting at each other. The hegemony war almost started right here in this palace, Morthon explained. 6 species were ready to declare war over territorial disputes. Captain Rodriguez was the only delegate allowed to move freely through all secure areas because she carried no weapons. Jake watched the historical footage with fascination. Lisa Rodriguez moved calmly through groups of hostile aliens, speaking with different delegates and apparently mediating disputes. She discovered that 3 species were planning to assassinate the hegemony leadership during the peace negotiations, Morthon said. Only someone with unrestricted access could have uncovered the plot in time. The hologram showed Rodriguez presenting evidence to the council. Jake could see weapons caches being discovered and conspirators being arrested. She saved thousands of lives that day, Morthon said quietly. If those assassinations had succeeded, the war would have consumed half the galaxy. So the human exception became permanent, Jake asked. The council voted unanimously, Morthon replied. Humans would be granted unrestricted access to all diplomatic facilities throughout the galaxy. Not because they were weak, but because they were trustworthy. The hologram faded and Morthon removed the crystal from the reader. He selected another crystal and activated a different set of images. Dr. Alan Parker studied on Zephyr Prime for 20 years after that incident, Morthon said. He was a human xenobiologist who wanted to understand why your species was so different. The new hologram showed a tall human man with graying hair working in a laboratory with Zephyrian scientists. Dr. Parker's research revealed the biological reasons behind human uniqueness, Morthon continued. Your species evolved on a world where cooperation was necessary for survival. Instead of developing natural weapons, humans developed empathy and communication skills. Jake studied the research data floating in the hologram. Charts showed human brain structures compared to other species, highlighting differences in areas that controlled aggression and social bonding. Humans have larger empathy centers in their brains, Morthon explained. They can sense the emotional states of other species better than those species can sense each other's emotions. This makes them natural mediators and peacekeepers. But we're not perfect, Jake said. Humans have wars too. Yes, but only with other humans, Morthon replied. Dr. Parker's research showed that humans almost never attack members of other species unless directly threatened. Your natural response to alien life forms is curiosity and protective behavior. The hologram showed various historical incidents where humans had encountered new alien species. In every case, the humans' first responses were attempts to communicate and help, even when the aliens were initially hostile. This is why you are trusted, Morthon said. Not because you are harmless, but because you instinctively protect rather than attack. Jake felt overwhelmed by this information. His entire life, he had thought of humans as just another species among many in the galaxy. He never realized they held such a unique position. There is something else you should know, Morthon said seriously. The trust placed in your species comes with great responsibility. Humans have prevented 17 major wars in the past 8 centuries simply by being present at diplomatic events. How? Jake asked. By being the neutral observers who could move freely and report honestly about what they saw, Morthon replied. Other species trust human reports because they know humans have no hidden weapons and no aggressive agendas. As they left the archives, Jake's mind raced with questions. He understood now why he had been allowed to walk freely through palace security, but he also felt the weight of centuries of trust resting on his shoulders. Keeper Morthon, he said, as they reached the surface levels of the palace. Is there anything specific I should be watching for during this summit? The old Zephyrian paused and looked at Jake with ancient, wise eyes. Ambassador Morrison, if history has taught us anything, it is that when humans are present at diplomatic gatherings, they often discover things that others miss. Trust your instincts, and remember that your species' greatest strength is knowing when something is wrong. Jake woke up to urgent knocking on his door at dawn. He stumbled out of bed still wearing his sleeping clothes and opened the door to find Security Chief Zalketh standing in the hallway with 2 guards. Ambassador Morrison, Zalketh said, in his deep growling voice, we need your assistance immediately. What's wrong? Jake asked, suddenly wide awake. Princess Zerani of the Void Touched was found dead in her quarters 1 hour ago, Zalketh replied grimly. This appears to be murder. Jake felt his stomach drop. Princess Zerani was one of the most peaceful delegates at the summit. Her species, the Void Touched, were known throughout the galaxy for their calm nature and wisdom. I'm sorry for your loss, Jake said carefully. But I'm not sure how I can help with a murder investigation. Zalketh's yellow eyes fixed on Jake intensely. Queen Lyrelei has requested your involvement. As the only off-world delegate who can move freely through all areas of the palace, you may be able to investigate where others cannot. Jake quickly dressed and followed Zalketh through the palace corridors. They passed several groups of delegates who whispered nervously as they walked by. Word of the princess's death was clearly spreading. Have you sealed off her quarters? Jake asked. Of course, Zalketh replied. But the investigation is complicated. Every delegate with natural weapons is now a suspect, since they were all required to surrender those weapons yesterday. They reached Princess Zerani's quarters, where several guards stood outside the door. Jake noticed that delegates from various species were being questioned in the hallway, all looking nervous and upset. The murder weapon was not a natural weapon, Zalketh explained as they entered the room. It was this. He pointed to a small, glowing crystal shard embedded in the wall near the princess's bed. The shard pulsed with an eerie purple light. Jake examined the scene carefully. Princess Zerani lay on her bed, looking peaceful except for a small wound in her chest. The crystal shard had apparently been thrown with great force to penetrate so deeply into the stone wall. What kind of crystal is this? Jake asked. We don't know yet, Zalketh admitted. Our scientists are analyzing it, but initial scans show it's not from any known weapons technology. Jake walked around the room, noting everything he saw. The quarters were neat and undisturbed except for the area around the bed. There were no signs of a struggle. She wasn't expecting an attack, Jake observed. She was probably sleeping when it happened. A new voice spoke from the doorway. That matches our preliminary findings. Jake turned to see a human man in palace guard uniform entering the room. He was tall and muscular with short brown hair and alert green eyes. Captain Ben Taylor, the man introduced himself. I'm the human security advisor here at the palace. I didn't know there were other humans working here, Jake said, shaking Ben's hand. Small staff, Ben replied. 3 of us total. We handle special security situations that require unrestricted access. Zalketh looked uncomfortable. I still believe this investigation should be handled by Zephyrian security forces. With respect, Chief, Ben said diplomatically, we need someone who can interview suspects in their own quarters. Most of your officers can't enter the secure diplomatic areas without extensive clearance procedures. Jake understood the problem. The palace was divided into different security zones based on the weapons restrictions. Guards from different species could only operate in certain areas to prevent conflicts. What do we know about the crystal? Jake asked. Ben pulled out a scanner and held it near the shard. Preliminary analysis suggests it came from somewhere inside the palace. The mineral composition matches the meditation crystals used in the royal chambers. Someone stole a crystal from the meditation chambers? Zalketh asked, surprised. More than that, Ben said. Someone modified it. These crystals are normally used for peaceful meditation. This one has been somehow weaponized. Jake studied the crystal more carefully. Who has access to the royal meditation chambers? Only senior. Palace staff and honored guests, Zalketh replied. The chambers are in the most secure part of the palace. We need to check those chambers, Jake said, and we need to interview everyone who had access. As they left Princess Zirani's quarters, Jake noticed General Vextar being questioned by guards near the elevator. The Krillian looked angry and defensive. I already told you, Vextar was saying loudly. I was in my quarters all night. Check your security recordings. Jake approached the group. General, I'm sorry about Princess Zirani. I know she was working with you on the territorial expansion vote. Vextar's expression softened slightly. She was a voice of reason in these chaotic times. Her death is a great loss. Do you know of anyone who might have wanted to harm her? Jake asked. Many species disagreed with her positions, Vextar replied carefully. She opposed military expansion into the neutral zones. Some saw her as an obstacle to progress. One of the guards questioning Vextar leaned toward Jake. The general's natural weapons were properly secured last night. He couldn't have committed this crime, but someone with access to palace crystals could have, Jake pointed out. Ben Taylor joined the conversation. We're checking all the meditation chambers now. If someone stole and modified a crystal, there should be evidence. They spent the next several hours investigating. Jake's unrestricted access allowed him to move freely between different areas of the palace, interviewing delegates and staff members. Most seemed genuinely shocked by the princess's death. In the royal meditation chambers, they found what they were looking for. One of the smaller crystals was missing from its mounting, and there were tool marks on the surrounding stone. Professional work, Ben observed, examining the tool marks. Whoever did this knew exactly how to remove the crystal without triggering security alarms. Jake noticed something else. Look at the floor here. There are scuff marks that don't match normal foot traffic patterns. Ben knelt down and examined the marks. These look like they were made by someone moving quickly and quietly, someone who didn't want to be seen. As they continued investigating, Jake began to notice a pattern in his interviews. Several delegates mentioned seeing suspicious activity near the meditation chambers over the past few days, but none of them could provide specific details. Someone has been planning this for a while, Jake told Ben as they reviewed their notes. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was carefully planned. Agreed, Ben replied. The question is why Princess Zirani specifically? What made her a target? Jake thought about what General Vexatar had said. She was opposed to military expansion. Maybe someone wanted her out of the way before the vote. That evening, Jake attended an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Queen Lyrelai announced that the summit would continue despite the tragedy, but with increased security measures. We will not allow violence to disrupt the cause of peace, the Queen declared. However, all delegates should be aware that we are dealing with a sophisticated threat. As delegates filed out of the session, Jake overheard a conversation between two species he didn't recognize. They were speaking in hushed tones about the plan proceeding as scheduled and eliminating obstacles. Jake quietly followed them, using his unrestricted access to trail them through areas where other security couldn't go. He watched as they met with a group of palace guards in a storage room deep in the palace basement. From his hiding spot, Jake could hear fragments of their conversation. Words like next target, tomorrow night, and make it look natural made his blood run cold. He realized that Princess Zirani's murder wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger conspiracy, and more attacks were planned. Jake carefully retreated from the storage room and contacted Ben Taylor on his secure communicator. "We have a problem," he whispered. "Princess Zirani's death was just the beginning." Jake met Ben Taylor in a secure communications room deep within the palace. The room was shielded against electronic surveillance, making it one of the few places they could speak freely. "What exactly did you overhear?" Ben asked, activating additional security measures. Jake pulled out his notes. 3 different conversations, all pointing to the same conclusion. This is bigger than just Princess Zirani's murder. He showed Ben his written observations. The 2 delegates I followed mentioned the plan proceeding as scheduled and eliminating obstacles. Then I heard palace guards talking about a next target and making it look natural. Ben studied the notes carefully. "This sounds like the hegemony faction, but organized on a level we haven't seen before." "There's more," Jake said. "I've been reviewing voting records from previous summits. Princess Zirani wasn't just opposed to military expansion. She was the deciding vote on 3 major peace initiatives over the past 5 years. Ben activated a secure communication link to the human diplomatic station orbiting the planet. "Sam, are you receiving us clearly?" A woman's voice came through the speakers. "Crystal clear, Ben. This is Communications Officer Sam Collins. What do you need?" "We need you to monitor all diplomatic transmissions for specific code words," Jake said. "Look for anything related to obstacles, schedule, or natural causes." "Already on it," Sam replied. "I've been tracking unusual communication patterns. Since yesterday, I'm seeing encoded transmissions that don't match normal diplomatic protocols." Ben and Jake exchanged concerned looks. "What kind of transmissions?" Ben asked. "Short bursts, heavily encrypted, sent between several delegations that normally don't communicate with each other," Sam explained. "The pattern suggests coordination between groups that should be political enemies." Jake felt his suspicions growing stronger. "Sam, can you identify which species are involved?" "Working on it now," Sam said. There was a pause filled with the sound of computer analysis. "Confirmed. The hegemony faction, obviously, but also 3 species that publicly oppose them, plus some palace staff transmissions that don't match normal security protocols." "Palace staff?" Ben asked sharply. "At least 6 different security positions," Sam confirmed. "Someone has compromised your internal communications." Jake realized the full scope of what they were dealing with. This isn't just about the military expansion vote. Someone is trying to eliminate moderate voices throughout the entire Galactic Council. Ben activated another communication channel. "Rick, are you there?" A new voice joined the conversation. "Rick Foster here. I'm in the maintenance tunnels checking security systems." Jake hadn't met Rick yet, but Ben had mentioned him as the 3rd human on the palace security team. "Rick, we need you to check something," Ben said. "Can you access the communication logs for palace security over the past week?" "Give me a few minutes," Rick replied. "I'm patching into the main security network now." While they waited, Jake continued reviewing his notes. "I think I know why they targeted Princess Zirani first. Her species, the Void touched, are natural telepaths. She might have sensed the conspiracy." "That makes sense," Ben agreed. "Telepathic species are always the first targets in political conspiracies. They're too good at detecting deception." Rick's voice came back through the speakers. "You guys are not going to like this. I found evidence of unauthorized access to the palace security grid. Someone has been monitoring guard positions and schedules for at least 2 weeks. Can you trace who did it? Jake asked. That's the scary part, Rick replied. The access codes belong to Security Chief Zalketh himself. Jake and Ben stared at each other in shock. That's impossible, Ben said. Zalketh has served the royal family for 30 years. I'm just telling you what the logs show, Rick said. Either he's involved, or someone is using his codes. Sam's voice interrupted their conversation. I've got more information on those coded transmissions. The encryption matches patterns used by something called the Dominion Collective. I've never heard of them, Jake said. Neither had I until 5 minutes ago, Sam replied. They're mentioned in some very classified intelligence reports. Apparently they're a shadow organization that's been working to destabilize the Galactic Council for decades. Ben pulled up files on his computer terminal. If the Dominion Collective is real, this goes way beyond anything we imagined. We're not just dealing with a political assassination. We're looking at an attempt to destroy galactic democracy. Jake felt overwhelmed by the implications. How many more people are they planning to kill? According to these intercepted transmissions, Sam said, at least 3 more assassinations are scheduled before the final vote on military expansion. And Jake, one of the targets is Queen Lyralee herself. The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. An attack on the Queen would throw the entire galaxy into chaos. We have to warn her, Jake said immediately. And say what? Ben asked. That we suspect her own security chief might be involved in a conspiracy we can't prove? Rick's voice came through the speakers again. I've got more bad news. The security system modifications I found aren't just for monitoring. Someone has been planting false data in the system. The logs showing where different delegates were last night have been altered. Meaning what? Jake asked. Meaning we can't trust any of the alibis we've been given, Rick explained. For all we know, half the delegates could have been anywhere, in the palace during Princess Zerani's murder. Jake realized they were dealing with a much more sophisticated operation than he had initially thought. This Dominion Collective has been planning this for months, maybe years. It gets worse, Sam said. I've been analyzing voting patterns from the past 10 summits. Every time a major peace initiative was proposed, key moderate delegates either changed their votes at the last minute or were unable to attend due to emergencies. Ben pulled up historical records on his screen. She's right. Look at this pattern. 12 moderate delegates have either died in accidents or suffered mysterious illnesses during crucial votes over the past decade. They've been systematically removing anyone who stands in the way of military expansion, Jake said, finally understanding the full scope of the conspiracy. And now they're making their final move, Sam added. If they eliminate Queen Lyralee and the remaining moderate voices, the hegemony faction will have enough votes to approve unlimited military expansion. Jake thought about everything Keeper Morthon had told him about human responsibilities in galactic diplomacy. This is exactly the kind of situation humans are supposed to prevent. We're the ones trusted to move freely and report what we see. But we're only 3 people against a conspiracy that might involve hundreds, Ben pointed out. Actually, we're 4, Rick corrected. And we have advantages they don't know about. They're counting on normal security protocols that don't apply to humans. Jake made a decision. We need to gather more evidence before we can approach Queen Lyralee. If we're wrong, we'll destroy human credibility in galactic politics. If we're right but can't prove it, we'll just warn them to be more careful. What do you suggest? Ben asked. We use our unrestricted access to investigate the 3 remaining targets, Jake said. We find out when and how they plan to strike, and we gather evidence that will expose the entire conspiracy. Sam's voice came through the speakers with urgency. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it fast. I'm intercepting more coded transmissions and they all have tomorrow's date on them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Tomorrow is the final vote on military expansion. It's also the formal dinner where Queen Lyralee will announce the voting schedule, Ben added grimly. Then we have less than 18 hours to stop them, Jake said. And we have to do it without alerting the conspirators that we know what they're planning. Jake spent the early morning hours sending coded messages to Earth Command. The response came faster than he expected. A ship would arrive within 6 hours carrying additional human security personnel disguised as cultural attachés. Commander, Kate Wilson is leading the team, Ben told Jake as they reviewed the incoming personnel files. Former military, 15 years of diplomatic security experience. How many people are coming? Jake asked. 6 total plus Wilson, Ben replied. That gives us 10 humans in the palace by tonight. Rick Foster joined them in the secure communications room, carrying a tablet full of technical data. I've been mapping the palace security vulnerabilities all night. The good news is that I found where they've been hiding their equipment. He showed them a 3-dimensional map of the palace with several areas marked in red. These rooms should be empty, storage areas according to official blueprints, but they're showing power usage and electronic signatures. Weapons? Jake asked. More likely communication and surveillance equipment, Rick said. But I also found 3 locations where the ventilation system has been modified. Ben studied the map. Modified how? Gas distribution points, Rick said grimly. If someone wanted to poison a large gathering without using traditional weapons, the ventilation system would be perfect. Jake felt his stomach clench. The formal dinner tonight. Hundreds of delegates in one room. That's what I'm thinking, Rick agreed. They could eliminate everyone who opposes military expansion in a single attack. Sam Collins's voice came through the communication system. I've got updates on those coded transmissions. The Dominion Collective is definitely planning something big for tonight, but I'm also seeing messages about individual targets. Queen Lyrelai? Jake asked. Her, plus Ambassador Threll of the Aquatic Collective and Supreme Elder Carthon of the Stone Speakers, Sam confirmed. All 3 are scheduled to speak against military expansion tonight. Ben activated his secure communicator. Kate, are you receiving? A crisp, professional woman's voice responded immediately. Commander Wilson here. We're 30 minutes out. From the palace. What's our operational status? Multiple assassination targets, possible mass poisoning attempt, and compromise palace security, Ben summarized quickly. Understood, Wilson replied without hesitation. My team is prepared for a full security operation. We'll need complete access to all palace areas. You'll have it, Jake assured her. Human privileges extend to all Earth personnel on diplomatic missions. Over the next few hours, Jake watched as Wilson's team integrated seamlessly into the palace environment. They arrived in small groups, carrying cultural gifts and documents that justified their presence as late additions to the Earth delegation. Wilson herself was impressive. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair and alert gray eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She moved through the palace with the confidence of someone who had protected diplomats in dangerous situations many times before. We've identified 3 primary threat vectors, Wilson told the group as they gathered in the secure room. Individual, assassinations, mass poisoning, and what appears to be a planned security system failure during the dinner. Security system failure? Jake asked. Tony Rodriguez, Wilson's second-in-command, answered. Someone has been preparing to shut down all security monitors and communication systems at exactly 8 p.m. tonight, right when the formal dinner begins. Jake noticed the name Rodriguez and remembered what Keeper Morthan had told him about Captain Lisa Rodriguez. Are you related to the Rodriguez who served here 8 centuries ago? Tony smiled. She was my great-great many times great-grandmother. Family tradition of diplomatic security service. Then you understand how important this is, Jake said. More than you know, Tony replied seriously. My family has been preventing galactic wars for 800 years. I'm not about to let that tradition end tonight. Wilson spread out detailed floor plans of the dining hall. Here's how we're going to handle this. Jake and Ben will attend the dinner as normal. Rick will monitor the ventilation systems. Tony and 2 others will position themselves in areas where they can respond to individual assassination attempts. What about the security system shutdown? Jake asked. My communications specialist will be ready to restore systems manually if needed, Wilson said. But our main advantage is that the conspirators don't know we're aware of their plans. Sam's voice came through the speakers urgently. You need to hear this. I just intercepted a transmission that mentioned acceptable losses among human delegates. The room fell silent. Jake felt cold dread wash over him. They know humans are investigating, Wilson said calmly. That changes everything. How could they know? Ben asked. Rick checked his equipment. Someone might have detected our communication intercepts, or they could have been monitoring human movement patterns in the palace. It doesn't matter how they found out, Wilson said. What matters is adjusting our response. If they're willing to target humans, they're more desperate than we thought. Jake realized the full implications. If they kill human diplomatic personnel, they'll destroy 8 centuries of trust. No one will believe humans are neutral anymore. Which is probably part of their plan, Tony observed. Remove the one species that can prevent galactic wars and wars become inevitable. Wilson began reassigning positions. We're moving to full protection protocol. All humans work in pairs, no exceptions. Jake, you'll still attend the dinner, but you'll have backup within arm's reach at all times. As evening approached, Jake dressed carefully for the formal dinner. He wore his finest diplomatic uniform, but underneath it, he carried several small devices that Wilson's team had given him: communication equipment, emergency medical supplies, and a scanner that could detect most known toxins. The dining hall looked magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across tables set with dishes from dozens of worlds. Delegates mingled in their finest ceremonial clothing, but Jake could sense tension underneath the polite conversations. Queen Lyrelay made her entrance precisely at 8 p.m., wearing robes of flowing silver that seemed to move like liquid metal. She took her place at the head table as hundreds of delegates found their seats. Jake sat with the Earth delegation, positioned where he could see most of the room. Ben was at a nearby table, dressed as a cultural attaché. Jake couldn't see the other humans, but he knew they were spread throughout the dining hall. Honored delegates, Queen Lyrelay began. Tonight we gather to celebrate the diversity and unity of our galactic community before tomorrow's historic vote on territorial expansion. As she spoke, Jake noticed several things that made him nervous. Security guards were positioned differently than in previous days. Some faces were unfamiliar. And the ventilation system seemed to be running more loudly than usual. His communicator buzzed softly, a message from Rick. Gas detected in ventilation, working to isolate source. Jake's heart began racing, but he forced himself to remain calm. Around him, delegates continued eating and drinking, unaware of the danger. Another message came through. Individual threats moving into position. 3 suspects approaching target tables. Jake scanned the room and spotted what Ben and Tony must have seen. 3 different individuals were moving through the crowd, each heading toward tables where Queen Lyrelay, Ambassador Threll, or Supreme Elder Carthon were seated. The formal dinner had become a battlefield, and Jake realized that the next few minutes would determine whether galactic civilization survived or descended into the chaos of interspecies war. Jake watched the 3 assassins move through the dining hall with deadly purpose. His communicator buzzed with urgent messages from Wilson's team, but he forced himself to remain calm and continue eating as if nothing was wrong. Gas neutralized, came Rick's message. Ventilation system secured. That was one threat eliminated, but the individual assassinations were still in progress. Jake could see Tony Rodriguez moving casually between tables, staying close to Queen Lyrelay without appearing obvious. Suddenly chaos erupted at Ambassador Threll's table. One of the assassins had made his move, lunging forward with what looked like a concealed blade. But Ben Taylor was ready. He intercepted the attacker, and the 2 crashed to the floor in a struggle. "Security breach," someone shouted, and panic began spreading through the dining hall. Jake saw the second assassin moving toward Supreme Elder Carthon, but Wilson herself appeared from behind a decorative pillar and blocked his path. The assassin tried to push past her, not realizing that the elderly-looking human woman was actually a trained combat expert. The third assassin was closest to Jake, heading for Queen Lyrelay's table. Jake made a split-second decision. He stood up and walked directly into the assassin's path, pretending to be confused by the commotion. "Excuse me," Jake said politely. "Is there some kind of emergency?" The assassin, a reptilian species Jake didn't recognize, tried to push Jake aside, but Jake had positioned himself perfectly. As the assassin moved around him, Tony Rodriguez was able to grab the attacker from behind. Within minutes, all 3 assassination attempts had been stopped. Wilson's team worked efficiently to secure the attackers while palace guards tried to restore order to the panicked crowd. Queen Lyreley stood at her table, apparently unharmed but clearly shaken. "What is happening here?" she demanded. Jake approached the Queen's table, knowing this was the moment when everything would be revealed. "Your Majesty, we've uncovered a conspiracy by an organization called the Dominion Collective. They've been planning to eliminate moderate voices in the Galactic Council." Security Chief Zalketh arrived with additional guards, but Jake noticed that some of those guards were the same ones he had seen in the basement meeting. Wilson's team was already moving to intercept them. "Your Majesty," Commander Wilson said, stepping forward, "I recommend that you allow human security to escort you to a safe location while we sort out which of your palace guards can be trusted." "This is outrageous," Zalketh protested. "I will not allow off-world security to dictate palace procedures." "Chief Zalketh," Jake said carefully, "we have evidence that your security codes were used to compromise the palace systems. You're either involved in this conspiracy, or someone has been impersonating you." Zalketh's expression changed from anger to confusion. "My security codes? That's impossible. I change them daily." Rick Foster appeared beside Jake, carrying a tablet full of data. "Actually, Chief, someone has been cloning your codes electronically. We found the equipment hidden in storage rooms throughout the palace." As the full scope of the conspiracy became clear, Queen Lyreley made a decision that would change galactic history. "I am placing all palace security under temporary human oversight until this matter is resolved." The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. Some species protested loudly, but others nodded in agreement. The assassination attempts had proven that traditional security methods weren't sufficient. Over the next several hours, Wilson's team worked with loyal palace guards to round up the conspirators. The investigation revealed that the Dominion Collective had been operating for decades, slowly infiltrating governments throughout the galaxy. Their ultimate goal was to make interspecies cooperation impossible, Jake explained to Queen Lyreley during a private meeting after the crisis. By eliminating moderate voices and triggering conflicts, they hoped to justify military expansion and authoritarian rule. "And they nearly succeeded," the Queen replied thoughtfully. "If not for human intervention, we would have lost some of our most important voices for peace." 3 days later, Jake stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council to deliver his final report. The voting on military expansion had been postponed while the conspiracy investigation continued. "The events of the past week have demonstrated something important about galactic security," Jake told the assembled delegates. "Traditional weapons-based security isn't enough to protect against sophisticated conspiracies." He gestured to Wilson's team, who were seated in a special section for honored guests. "Humans were able to prevent this catastrophe not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because our species' unique characteristics made us capable of investigating freely and acting without triggering suspicion." General Vextar stood up to speak. "Ambassador Morrison, on behalf of the Krillian delegation, I apologize for my earlier protests about human privileges. We now understand why your species holds this special position." Similar statements came from dozens of other species. The attempted assassinations had convinced everyone that human trustworthiness wasn't favoritism. It was a vital security feature. Queen Lyreley made the announcement that Jake had been expecting. "The Galactic Council hereby establishes the Human Diplomatic Security Corps, with Ambassador Morrison as its first director. All major diplomatic events will now include human security oversight." The vote was unanimous. In his private quarters that night, Jake video-called Earth Command to report on the new developments. Admiral Hayes, the head of Earth's diplomatic services, listened carefully to Jake's summary. "This is a significant expansion of human responsibilities in galactic affairs," Admiral Hayes observed. "Are you prepared for what this means?" "I think so," Jake replied. "But I've learned something important this week. Humans aren't trusted because we're perfect, or because we're weak. We're trusted because our evolutionary path made us natural protectors and cooperators. And that's a responsibility we can't take lightly," Admiral Hayes agreed. 6 months later, Jake reviewed the first quarterly report of the Human Diplomatic Security Corps. The organization now had personnel stationed at diplomatic facilities throughout the galaxy. Assassination attempts had dropped to 0, and several other conspiracies had been uncovered before they could cause damage. The military expansion vote had finally taken place, with full participation from all moderate voices. The result was a compromise that established limited expansion with strong oversight provisions. Exactly the kind of balanced solution that would have been impossible if the Dominion Collective had succeeded. Jake thought about Captain Lisa Rodriguez and all the humans who had served as galactic peacekeepers over the centuries. He was proud to continue their tradition, but he also understood the weight of responsibility that came with it. Commander Wilson knocked on his office door. "Jake, we've got reports of suspicious activity at the Centauri Trade Conference. Looks like another conspiracy brewing." Jake stood up and reached for his diplomatic jacket. "Then we'd better get moving. The galaxy is counting on us to keep the peace." As they walked through the corridors of the new Human Diplomatic Security Corps headquarters, Jake reflected on how much had changed. Humans were no longer seen as the weak species without natural weapons. They were recognized as the galaxy's most effective peacekeepers, not despite their lack of weapons, but because of it. The title, "Why Only Humans Are Trusted to Enter Royal Courts Without Weapons," had taken on new meaning. It wasn't just about trust anymore. It was about humanity's unique role as the guardians of galactic civilization. Jake smiled as he boarded the transport ship that would take them to their next assignment. Being human had never felt more important.